what's happening
and
in the world.
Paula, we have to leave it there. I'm sorry about that. The House of Representatives is in Katha Pollitt of the Nation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you want to see the rest of our series on our spotlight of columnists, go to our cspan.org website. We go to the House of Representatives.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, for 5 minutes.
Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes to revise and extend my...
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, when the world is in trouble, when peoples throughout history are in need of help because of oppression, and they need freedom and liberty, those nations always call 911. And who answers on the other end of that call? Throughout history of this great nation, America answers. We always answer the call when somebody is in trouble and they need help. And such an occurrence occurred in 1950. In 1950, World War II was over with. The United States had downsized its military. Basically, we were unprepared for another war. But you know, war picks its own opportunities. And what occurred in 1950 was that in the Korean Peninsula, North Korea, with the aid of the Chinese, invaded our ally, South Korea. They went into the heartland of South Korea, and of course, South Korea called 911. America answered. They called it a UN operation, but history shows that UN operations basically are American operations, where Americans go and fight those battles. Our country also called it a conflict. Our own president at that time referred to it as a police action, but it was neither of those. It was a war. It was a war where Americans went and fought. I want to tell you about one such action that occurred in the Korean War, Mr. Speaker. You may or may not have ever heard of Hill 303 in South Korea. The Americans, under the control and operation of the 2nd Battalion, 5th Cavalry Regiment of the 1st Cavalry Division, had the high ground on Hill 303. Approaching them were a superior number of North Korean communists coming to take that hill. The Americans were pushed off that hill except for a small group of Americans who refused to leave. Company G, a mortar company, and Company H stayed on the hill, approaching troops. At first they thought that these approaching troops were South Koreans coming to help them, but it turned out, of course, they were North Koreans. But they held their ground anyway, and they were overrun by the North Koreans. And here's what happened after the Americans retook the hill. As they retook the hill, they found out that those members of Mortar Company G and Company H, those that had been captured, had their hands tied behind their backs, that they were put in a gully there in South Korea, unknown to anybody, and they were machine gunned down. 40 of the 45 were murdered. The other 5 were able to survive, and some escaped. And this weekend, this nation honored our war dead for all wars. And I want to thank a school in my district, Creekwood Middle School, for honoring and remembering those 40 Americans that were murdered on Hill 303 in 1950 when the Americans held that ground and were overrun by the North Koreans. Creekwood Middle School has a history of honoring American history, especially in our wars. They did a history project not too many years ago on World War I. But at this project that they had on Saturday of last weekend, they honored these men as they should have that were murdered on Hill 303. They have a memorial there at Creekwood Middle School for them, probably the only memorial in the United States that honors those men at Hill 303 in Korea. There is one in South Korea, however. One of the people that was present then and also present Monday at Memorial Day at the Houston National Cemetery was Donald Foisey. Donald Foisey of Atascocita, Texas, is 80 years old. He got the Purple Heart that day because he was able to survive that onslaught of the North Koreans. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask unanimous consent to introduce the names of the 40 members of the Army that were murdered that day by the North Korean communists.
Without objection.
37,000 Americans died in Korea. When the war was over, it just ended. There was no peace treaty. It just stopped. It's a ceasefire. We still have Americans at the 38th parallel guarding that border. When those troops came home, they were ignored. Unlike Vietnam, those troops were abused. Those troops that came home from Korea were just basically ignored. America was more interested in Marilyn Monroe marrying the great baseball player Joe DiMaggio, and this new rock star Elvis Presley than they were honoring our war dead. It's important that America must always honor those that served and did not return, and those that served and returned, those that served and returned with the wounds of war. For Mr. Speaker, the worst casualty of war is to be forgotten, and that's just the way it is. I yield back.
The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumen, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Taxation is serious business. How to pay for what America needs should be at the core of a thoughtful policy and political discussion. Unfortunately, going into a campaign silly season, it will be hard to have any thoughtful conversation. Here on Capitol Hill, we've been trapped in a twilight zone for years, making a reasonable discussion for revenue extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible. The simple fact is that we are an aging and growing nation. Our tax collection in recent years have fallen due to a combination of the near economic collapse and the maddening slow economic recovery, which together with a series of tax cuts since 2001 have reduced total collections to levels not seen since Harry Truman was president. And they continue to lag. As important as it is to do business differently, to rein in and reform defense spending, our bloated agricultural programs, and health care, the tax system itself must be addressed. More revenues are required to meet our needs, service the debt, and avoid more borrowing. Most Americans understand this. While no one wants to pay higher taxes, the public understands and will support them if done right, balanced, simple, and fair. The worst tax is a tax on our future, the result of unsustainable spending and debt coupled with tax cuts for people who don't need or deserve them. The second worst tax is the complex mess we inflict on the public right now. The tax system has a compliance cost of over $160 billion a year for a system that is unfair and inefficient. Now, there are only a few tax choices we should examine and discuss before we start arguing about the ultimate solution. We can only tax work, wealth, consumption, user fees, investment. We can also tax what we don't like, the so-called sin taxes, like pollution or tobacco. And finally, there are royalties for what, if anything, we get back when we give away public wealth like oil, gas, gold, and other valuable minerals. This is not an insignificant source of revenue not for some faceless government, but for the public, and it's too seldom discussed in the context of paying for services or reducing the debt. All seven have advantages and disadvantages, but we should be clear-eyed about them, especially this year when we will be considering before December 31st what the CBO says will cost $5.4 trillion to extend all the expiring tax provisions for the next 10 years. This would be a good place to start in reforming the tax system and collecting badly needed revenue. This should be done only after careful examination. Changes that we may want have to be done very carefully. They don't have to be done all at once or suddenly, because that can have unintended consequences. There are some areas where we need to continue current policy. Something that should happen as soon as possible is to extend the production tax credit, which is one of those provisions due to expire at the end of the year. This modest subsidy has helped jumpstart alternative energy, particularly for wind, and it could be a model on how to do it right for energy and economic growth. It doesn't have to be a permanent entitlement, but merely help the industry come to scale. But the threat that it won't be extended has already shut down new project development and curtailed manufacturing in the United States. Bipartisan legislation could be passed next week overwhelmingly, and I hope it's something that we would consider. Some areas need bold action, like the alternative minimum tax. This has been perverted into a grossly unfair tax on millions of American families and threatens tens of millions more. It will never be imposed. We will do everything we can to blunt its full effects. It should just be eliminated outright as part of this end-of-the-year process. Other provisions like carried interest, where billionaire hedge fund managers get wildly favorable tax treatment on unbelievable wealth, cries out for reform. Using the looming deadline to deal with the basics, we can phase in adjustments over the full 10-year period to be fair in transition, avoid dislocation, and continue to nurture the still fragile recovery. And if we start now, we will be able to make commitments, hopefully, that will be honored by both parties over the course of the next decade. Done right, we can meet the revenue requirements for what America needs, simplify the system, reduce unfairness and complexity, and reduce cheating so that it's fair and more efficient.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Walberg, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past Monday, we gathered together to honor America's fallen soldiers, the men and women who gave their lives sacrificially in exchange for our freedoms. Amid the Memorial Day parades and picnics, we reflected on their courage, their bravery to fight for these freedoms at any cost, including the ultimate cost. We must never take for granted the privilege we enjoy because of their sacrifice, such as being able to worship where and how we want, that our media can share information without fear of censorship, and that we can freely vote for public officials without fear of punishment. Let us also remember the young men and women spread across the world who continue to fight for that freedom. To them, we also say thank you and pray for a safe and soon return. But our commitment to the men and women who serve in our armed forces should not end when they return. Each year, thousands of new veterans return home, many to Michigan's 7th District, still wearing the physical, mental, and emotional scars from their time in combat. I'm fighting in Congress to make sure that veterans receive the highest quality medical care that they have earned and they deserve. I also want to provide our nation's heroes with resources they need to settle back into civilian life, which is why I co-sponsored the Veterans Opportunity to Work Act. Specifically, this legislative package, which became law last November, will smooth the transition for veterans from military service back into the job market through job counseling, training, and placement. Too often, our troops return home expecting to trade their fatigues and weapons for a suit or a hard hat, only to find out that the employment situation is a battlefield, to say the least, of a different kind. Millions of Americans are without work under the current administration's failed economic policies, with the unemployment numbers being considerably higher for veterans. To me, there is no greater way to honor our nation's servicemen and women than by making sure they can get a job when they return. I've held a number of jobs fairs back in my district tailored specifically to assisting veterans. At each and every event, experts are on hand to offer advice for how to effectively search for a job, write a resume, and impress during an interview. Up to 50 vendors and local businesses who would be honored to hire our nation's heroes attend these events. Republicans have also put forth a plan for America's job creators built around small businesses, not big government. It includes reining in federal regulations and out-of-control spending which holds back small businesses, repealing the costly health care law, and tapping into the abundance of natural resources right in our own backyard. We're focused on long-term growth and not a short-term stimulus. Our veterans need jobs now and in the future. Those that answer the call of duty from their country should not be overlooked when they return home. I remain committed to providing the best care and a strong economy for our nation's heroes. It is the least we can do for those that have already given so much. And as always, may God bless and protect our troops and their families. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow is June 1st, and it marks the very start of the hurricane season in the United States. And first I want to take a moment to thank our first responders, those police officers, those firefighters, those EMS personnel, and all of our emergency personnel who risked their lives to save America's lives. But I also want to stand and thank and recognize another group of first responders. And those are our brave and talented and many times courageous local broadcasters of television and radio and the journalists, many who are the first right after the first responders, sometimes before the first responders, bringing to the American people vital, life-saving information. And so it is very important that as we begin this hurricane season, that we take a moment and say a word for our local broadcasters for television and radio. And I know firsthand how important this is, for I represent a district in Georgia that had a devastating, history-making flood and storm situation in 2009. I represent Cobb County and Douglas County, two of the hardest hit counties, along with Fulton County. We lost 10 lives. 7 of those lives that we lost were from one county alone in Douglas County. Many of you might have seen the devastation. The Six Flags over Georgia, which is an amusement park, was completely underwater. We lost over 500 businesses and homes in that area. But most importantly, we would have lost so much more if we did not have the timely, vital, life-saving information from our local radio and television broadcasters. And so I wanted to also say that broadcasters' commitment to public service is never more apparent than during the times of crisis. During an emergency, no other service can match the ability of broadcasters to deliver the comprehensive, up-to-date warnings and information affected by citizens. Just think, we have a senior citizen, many of whom, who live alone, and their only contact with the outside world is that radio or that television, letting them know what is coming and how to prepare for it. Television broadcasters reach millions of households across the country every day, and radio reaches more than 241 million Americans each week. And though if we are to improve disaster preparedness in our nation, we've got to make sure that local stations, television and radio, have the necessary tools to continue to communicate with people and to communicate with each other in these times of crisis. And so as the 2012 hurricane season gets underway, and as local communities continue to face erratic weather conditions, I know that every American feels safer knowing that their local broadcasters are dedicated and committed to saving lives by providing critical news and information to our local communities. It is so important that we always remember that we must prepare for the storms before the hurricanes are raging. And we thank our local broadcasters for helping us to prepare for the storms before the hurricanes are raging. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I wanted to come to the floor and say that I was very disappointed during the debate on the NDAA bill, National Defense Authorization Act. We spent hours debating, and we only had 20 minutes to debate Afghanistan. That's 10 minutes each side. and Congresswoman Lee had her amendment, which I supported on the floor, but Mr. McGovern and I, McGovern Jones amendment, we had worked together for weeks crafting an amendment that basically said accountability. On 2014, bringing our troops out, we need to have these guidelines, and I was very disappointed that our leadership would not bring our amendment to the floor. I think it's tragic that our young men and women are dying in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we're not meeting our constitutional responsibility when it comes to debating war. Last Saturday, like many of my colleagues, I was invited to speak at a memorial event down in Beaufort, North Carolina. Primarily, those in attendance were our veterans of yesterday and some of our active duty Marines of today. It was amazing. I'm not a great speaker, but when I talked about bringing our troops out of Afghanistan before 2014, I got a strong applause in agreement. We have a tremendous responsibility to take care of our wounded from Afghanistan and Iraq. In this financial crisis, I truthfully don't know how we're going to take care of them, to be honest about it. But we will deal with it, that I know. But yet we continue to spend $10 billion a month. It's borrowed money from the Chinese to prop up Karzai in Afghanistan and to pay his bills, to fix his roads, to fix his water systems. But in America, we can't fix our roads and our water systems. Somewhere along the way, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. Last Saturday, before I went down to Beaufort, North Carolina to give the speech, the Raleigh News and Observer published 27 names of Americans who had been killed in Afghanistan. And Mr. Speaker, to honor those 27 who gave their life for this country, I ask unanimous consent that at this time I might submit those 27 names for the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, 2014 is a long way from 2012. How many more names must appear in the paper? Congress needs to have more debates about our policy in Afghanistan. We've got those in this country right now that want to go in and bomb Syria and bomb Iran and do all these things, and yet we in Congress just sit by and pass more and more bills to pay for all this funding overseas that we can't even account for. Mr. Speaker, before closing, I bring the post of this young woman who's in tears, holding a little baby in her lap. The baby has no idea why this man in uniform is on his knees presenting a flag to this little girl's mother. How many more scenes like this must happen while Congress sits by and passes more and more spending bills to take care of Afghanistan, while we deny the American people? Senior citizens can't get sandwiches at the Senior Citizen Center. Children can't get a pint of milk before school because we're going to cut those programs, but we're going to take care of a corrupt leader in Afghanistan. Mr. Speaker, it makes no sense at all that when we should have been debating Afghanistan a week ago, 72% of the American people in a poll that week said, get out of Afghanistan now. And we had 20 minutes, 10 the Democratic side and 10 the Republican side. That's no way to say thank you to those serving. That's no way to say thank you to the families who've given a loved one. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, as I always do, ask God to please bless our men and women in uniform. I ask God to please bless the families of our men and women in uniform. I ask God in His loving arms to hold the families who've given a child dying for freedom in Afghanistan and Iraq. I ask God to bless the House and Senate that we will do what is right in the eyes of God for God's people here in the United States of America. And I ask God to bless President Obama that he will do what is right in the eyes of God for God's people in America today and tomorrow. And 3 times I will say, God please, God please, God please continue to bless America. And I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Quigley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the falsely named Prenatal Non-Discrimination Act, or PRENDA. This might be one of the most disingenuous bills to ever come to the floor of the House. The authors of this bill are talking out of both sides of the mouth, so today I want to set the record straight. In one breath, the proponents of this bill say they are protecting female fetuses by preventing abortions based on sex. and that we must pass this bill to protect women everywhere and ensure that girls are as valued as boys. Yet, just last week, these same members obstructed the passage of an expanded Violence Against Women Act that would have protected all victims of violence. The same members who today espouse equality for women voted against the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which will help combat the discrimination against women that keeps them earning 70 cents for every dollar that men earn. The same members who today talk of protecting female babies continue to vote to gut the Prevention and Public Health Fund, which will be used to provide life-saving breast and cervical cancer screenings to millions of the very women Prenda's proponents claim to care so much about. Here's the truth. This is not about women's equality. Prenda is simply another attempt by choice opponents to obstruct women's access to reproductive health care. I agree with the bill's proponents that abortions based on sex are a problem around the world, and I agree that we must take action to stop these abusive practices both at home and around the world. But let me be clear, this bill will not prevent sex-selective abortions, and here's why. First, criminalizing such practices simply will not work. Banning sex-selective abortions has already been tried in various countries around the world, and what expert agencies such as the World Health Organization, which operate in these countries, have found is that these bans don't prevent abortions. Rather, they simply result in, quote, a greater demand for clandestine procedures which fall outside regulation, protocols, and monitoring and basic safety, end of quote. These restrictions serve only to drive these procedures underground, making them less safe. Our own history proves this point. Second, criminalization of sex-selective abortions would force physicians to question women about their reasons for seeking abortion. It would likely compel physicians to target certain groups of women from cultures where sex selection abortion is more prevalent. To avoid liability, physicians may even cease providing such care to entire groups of women simply because of their race. This bill would promote racial profiling and discrimination. Additionally, targeting such motivations in practice would be nearly impossible. According to an analysis by the World Health Organization and 4 other UN agencies, quote, prosecuting offenders is practically impossible. And further, proving that a particular abortion was sex-selective is equally difficult. These expert international organizations do offer a viable solution to address this issue, a solution unmentioned in H.R. 3541. Address the root causes which drive individuals to prefer sons over daughters. The United Nations, through its work in nations where sex selection is prevalent, has stated that the most effective way to address this son preference is by fighting the root economic, social, and cultural causes of sex inequality. South Korea successfully lowered its male-to-female ratio from 116 boys for every 100 girls in the 90s to 107 boys per 100 girls in 2007. They did this by passing laws to improve the legal status of women and by implementing a public education campaign emphasizing the importance of women. So if we are going to consider this bill, let's be honest about it. Its supporters are not promoting women's equality, and they are not serious about preventing sex-selective abortions, because if they were, they would be promoting programs to empower women and girls to combat son preference. Instead, they are criminalizing physicians, profiling cultural groups, and driving abortion services underground. The truth is this bill is another attempt to restrict women's reproductive health care wrapped in the rhetoric of women's rights. Don't be fooled by Prenda. Vote no. Thank you, and I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Harper, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to take note of the 25th anniversary of the Montgomery GI Bill on June the 1st, and to share with my colleagues that this landmark legislation continues to pay dividends in strengthening our all-volunteer military and providing far-reaching educational opportunities for so many Americans. I'm also proud to note that the author of this GI Bill was G.V. Sonny Montgomery of Mississippi. He served the 3rd Congressional District from 1967 to 1997, the same congressional district that I'm so honored to represent today. Sonny was chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee for 14 years and a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee. He understood military and veterans issues and worked tirelessly in support of a strong national defense and the men and women who served our great nation. All across central Mississippi, one can find many tributes to Sonny. The VA Medical Center in Jackson bears his name, as does the G.V. Sonny Montgomery National Guard Complex in his hometown of Meridian, Mississippi. Another facility that deserves mention is the G.V. Sonny Montgomery Center for America's Veterans at his alma mater, Mississippi State University. The professionals at this center have won national praise for their work in helping veterans, dependents, and family members transition from military life to the classroom, including administering benefits for the GI Bill. Their efforts enhance Sonny's legacy as a champion for military and veterans causes. His 35-year background as a World War II veteran and Korea War veteran, and as a retired Major General in the Mississippi National Guard, gave Sonny a unique perspective for the leadership role he played in Congress on national security and veterans issues. The United States abolished the military draft in 1973, and by the late 1970s, the success of the all-volunteer force was in peril because the service branches had difficulty recruiting quality individuals. One high-ranking U.S. Army official referred to it as a hollow army and decried the need for help in crafting a plan to boost enlistments. As chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, Sonny recognized these needs and proposed a cost-effective education incentive that would be popular with college-age youth. Sonny's vision won high praise, with one admiral saying it reversed expectations of failure and planted the promise of success in our post-Vietnam era military. One official at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point wrote, "Transitioning to the all-volunteer force was the most important change the Army made since World War II. The Montgomery GI Bill was the policy vehicle that allowed this to happen." I should also note that the law made National Guard and Reserve personnel eligible for educational benefits for the first time in history. It reflected Sonny's understanding of the importance of our reserve components in our national defense picture. The role of our Guard and Reserve today is even stronger, and I am confident that the Montgomery GI Bill has been key to that success. Over the past quarter century, more than 2.6 million veterans have used the Montgomery GI Bill. It has made a difference in the lives of the men and women who have pursued higher educational opportunities that otherwise might not have been available. It is also one of the foundations upon which our military continues to stand as the greatest military power in history. And with that, I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady.
She does. Okay.
Yeah. Gentlelady from California, Ms. Lee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As the co-founder of the Congressional Out of Poverty Caucus, I rise today to continue talking about the crises of rising poverty, devastating families in every single congressional district all across our country. Mr. Speaker, I also rise today to recognize Linda Lee and Geraldine Matthew. These two extraordinary women are among a group of farm workers who spent their lives working in the swampy fields bordering Lake Apopka in Florida. Their back-breaking work helped to provide the bulk of the winter season produce on the eastern seaboard. In the early 1990s, a settlement was negotiated with the large farming corporations where 20,000 acres of land were sold for roughly $100 million. A negligible amount of $200,000 was allocated for the 2,500 farm workers, and most were simply given pink slips despite decades of service on the farm. For years, these workers were exposed to a chemical mixture of carcinogens and other contaminants as planes crop dusted the fields. Now these workers are suffering from an array of diseases that have been linked to long-term pesticide exposure. Their children suffer from defects caused by prenatal exposure to harmful contaminants. These women have worked for over a decade to bring attention to their cause, while many of their former colleagues unfortunately have passed away. Although these women are desperately seeking some relief and good health, What they ask for more than anything else is their dignity. Dignity is the contribution of their community in feeding this nation and the sacrifices they made in doing so. I would therefore offer my profound and earnest gratitude to these incredible women, to their community, and to farm workers across the country, for theirs truly are the hands that feed us. Mr. Speaker, now more than ever, we need to redouble our efforts to reward hard work. We must work to be sure that Americans who work all of their lives have something to show for it. This does not just affect Linda Lee or Geraldine Matthew. We cannot ignore the fact that millions of Americans have seen their retirement savings decimated, their pensions shortchanged, and their wages stagnant or falling. Even in the face of a rising tide of poverty and an economy with high unemployment, the Tea Party-led Republicans continue their efforts to slash programs which protect the health and well-being of millions of low-income and working poor families. In the coming weeks and months, we will begin to see the impact of the, quite frankly, immoral cuts to vital unemployment benefit extensions as thousands of people across our country who are struggling to find a job will be thrown off of unemployment benefits, thrown off, kicked off the rolls. Some of them may be lucky enough to find work, but far too many will be suddenly cut off with nearly nothing to keep them from falling behind into poverty. They will have been left out and left behind. We may disagree on how to help families in need and workers who are struggling to find work, access needed health services, or feed their children, but we can all agree that leave struggling families completely cut off of unemployment insurance with nowhere to turn for help is not the American way. When Republican politicians protect tax cuts for millionaires, we must be very adamant about protecting the working poor. When Tea Party Republicans fight to protect tax write-offs for corporations and big oil, we must fight to protect hard-working Americans. When Republican Tea Party members continue to spend their energy protecting the dividend gains on investments, we must fight to protect Linda Lee and Geraldine Matthew women who have worked their entire lives and are left with nothing to show for it. So, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, there are some who continue to support policies for the 1% where profits rather than people matter. We need a jobs bill for those who are desperately in need of a job, and we need to help with their support for themselves and their families. So we do need a strong safety net to act as a bridge over these troubled economic times. It's critical to reaffirm that the needs and the aspirations of the poor and the working poor are really important and critical for us to address, for they too are aspiring to be part of the middle class. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time. And I want to thank Congresswoman Jackson Lee for her support and for her yielding, because I know she cares about Linda Lee and Geraldine Matthew and all of the issues that she continues to fight for. So thank you very much.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus, for 5 minutes. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I come back to the floor again. This is my 13th time really doing a tour of the United States, highlighting the locations where we currently store high-level nuclear waste in this country. And with the end of this location, I will have placed into record the position of our U.S. senators in each one of these states on where they stand on either keeping high-level nuclear waste in their state at their location or helping us move to a centralized repository at Yucca Mountain in the desert in Nevada. So let's go to the location. Here's Yucca Mountain, which is by law the site based upon the 1982 Nuclear Waste Policy Act and the amendments passed in 1987. So I'm comparing it to a place in Virginia very close by, the North Anna Nuclear Generating Station on North Anna Lake, which is a recreational lake that many people in Virginia know. So Yucca Mountain right now has currently no nuclear waste on site. What about North Anna? North Anna has 1,200 metric tons of uranium of spent nuclear fuel on site. If we had nuclear waste in Yucca Mountain, where would it be? It would be stored 1,000 feet underground. Where's the nuclear waste stored at North Anna? Well, it's stored above the ground in pools and in casts. If it was at Yucca Mountain as defined by law, where would it be in comparison to the groundwater? Well, it would be 1,000 feet above the water table because Yucca Mountain is in a desert. What about North Anna? Well, it is 53 feet above the groundwater, and as you can see from the photo, it's right next to a major lake in the Commonwealth of Virginia. How far is, if the waste was at Yucca Mountain, how far would it be from the largest body of water in the area? It would be 100 miles from the Colorado River. Again, from the photo you see that North Anna is right next to the lake. So let's look at the senators from the Commonwealth of Virginia and in their time serving, what's their position on where the nuclear waste should be? Should it stay in the Commonwealth of Virginia or should it move to the desert underneath the mountain? Well, let's start with Senator Webb, who's not running for re-election. He's been in the chamber now 5.5 years, no stated position. It's kind of hard to believe to be a U.S. senator who has nuclear waste on site and does not have a stated position on whether you want nuclear waste stored right next to a recreational lake in your state or moved underneath a mountain in the desert. Senator Warner came 2 years after. Senator Webb's been there 4 years. No stated position. Why is this concerning? Well, we go to the total tally of our 100 U.S. senators based upon either votes taken in the House or in the Senate or public statements rendered, and this is what we have as of today. Remember, I've come to the floor 13 different times identifying nuclear waste storage facilities all around the country. Most of the time, they're generating stations. Sometimes they're Department of Defense waste sites, like Hanford, Washington, which is the first place that I talked about. Based upon our tally, we have 55 votes for a high-level nuclear waste central repository at Yucca Mountain. We have 22 individuals, we noticed 2 today, who have never taken a position on whether the high-level nuclear waste should be in their state or in their locality or in the desert underneath a mountain. We also have 23 that have cast votes or made statements against that. Now, why is this tally important? Well, it only takes 60 votes to move a piece of legislation in the U.S. Senate. Closer debate based upon a filibuster than a simple majority vote. So the question is, when will these 22 senators at least make some position statement on the high-level nuclear waste repository? Now, there are 4 other senators that I've included in this, 2 from Alaska, 2 from Hawaii. They have no nuclear waste in their state, but Senator Begich from Alaska has no stated position. Senator Murkowski voted for a high-level nuclear waste storage site. She's also from Alaska. Senator Akaka voted no in a 2002 vote. Senator Inouye voted no in a 2002 vote. So that finishes the culmination of all the senators. Based upon the problem in Japan with Fukushima Daiichi and the issue of high-level nuclear waste, isn't it about time we stop this administration's attack and move to Yucca Mountain? With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
I thank the Speaker for his courtesies. Let me first of all say how pleased I am to have Benjamin with me, who is representing and advocating for the fairness and treatment of the foster care system and foster children as they mature into adulthood. This is an important aspect of democracy. Mr. Speaker, I come this morning with a series of issues regarding rights. First of all, let me acknowledge that this was the week, Memorial Day week, when I hope all of us were doing more commemorating than possibly celebrating with tasty food. I had the privilege, of course, of joining our community in a National Memorial Day celebration at the Houston Veterans Cemetery, and then going to the Heights, my historic community, and commemorating the fallen soldiers at the World War II monument in the Heights community of the 18th Congressional District. And on this past Saturday, I had a fun festival day of veterans and celebration commemorating the service of our soldiers, those who are fallen and those who live. That's why I rise today to ask and encourage, even after the NATO meeting, that we have a quick resolution of the Afghan war. And I join my colleagues, Congresswoman Barbara Lee and Walter Jones, in their discussion this afternoon of what next in Afghanistan. We thank those soldiers on the front line, and none of our commentary to bring this war to an end has anything to do with their brave, wonderful, heroic acts of service, fighting for democracy and justice. We ask President Karzai and his government to end its corruptness and to begin to transition so that the people of Afghanistan can live in peace. We want peace as well, and we want their rights to prevail. Mr. Speaker, I now move to a tragic situation of huge proportions. I joined Syrian Americans Tuesday, in my community, standing in front of the steps, standing in front of the courthouse, the federal courthouse, crying out for peace and justice for the Syrian people. Alongside of me were Syrian Americans whose families were in Hula and homes and had seen the brutality. We had projections of the violence against children and bodies wrapped in white cloth. Mr. Speaker, we cry out and wonder why there cannot be more done by the world. Where is the outrage? Where is the outrage? Though I congratulate the Secretary of State and the President of the United States and other Western countries and others who have expelled the Syrian envoys, get them out now, because obviously Dr. Assad does not recognize that people are valued. And so I call upon the Arab League to put pressure on China and Russia. Let us not put our individual needs of energy, oil and gas, oil in particular, over the deadly violence that is going on in Syria. Shame on you. I ask the UN Security Council, that is now blocked by China and Russia, to institute a UN Unity of Peace Resolution number 377 that was done during the Korean War, where you can go to the General Assembly and put forward recommendations that would engage or provide for peace, and provide for the involvement of other countries, providing for the assistance of the Syrian Free Army. No, I am not asking for war. I'm asking for the end of the violence in Syria. How can we stand by, as we once stood by looking at Darfur, as we once stood by looking at Rwanda? How can we stand by? I cry out for this Congress to issue sanctions. I cry out for actions. Let me conclude by simply saying today we will have on the floor of the House a bill by the name of Prenda. And as I've heard from my colleagues, not one of us disagree with the idea of forced abortions, meaning that we do not disagree that that is heinous and horrific. I fear the Prenda legislation because it is not thoughtful and has not been drafted in a way that distinguishes the rights of women in this nation to have choice. And what it does, Mr. Speaker, is it criminalizes a doctor and criminalizes a relationship between a patient and a physician. And in this country, we have the right of choice. That choice is between a woman, her God, her faith, her family, and her physician. And what you do in Prenda is that you taint and stigmatize the relationship between the doctor and the patient. You immediately suggest that a woman who is coming, because how do you get into the mindset and the psyche of a physician who is doing his job, providing the care that the woman has asked, her choice, and begin to demonize and suggest that she is forcibly deciding to abort because she is forcibly deciding what gender she wants. And then, of course, you add insult to injury by profiling various countries. And as my colleague has previously said, why can't we look for more positive ways of providing women's rights and discerning or educating people that women are equally valuable as humanity, as human beings, than as men. But the Prenda bill demonizes the relationship, the patient-physician relationship. We cannot have that. I ask for a no vote, and I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the Carol Martin Gatton Academy of Mathematics and Science for being named America's Best Public High School for 2012 by Newsweek magazine. Each year, Newsweek publishes a ranking of the nation's top 1,000 public high schools. Schools are judged on criteria such as percentage of graduates accepted to college, advanced placement and international baccalaureate test scores, and average SAT scores. Year after year, 1/4 of the schools making the list are located near major metropolitan areas. However, I'm proud to announce this year's #1 school, the Gatton Academy of Mathematics and Science, is in my hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky. I witnessed firsthand the Gatton Academy grow from a dream of a few committed individuals into a reality. I was serving in the Kentucky Senate back in 2004 when rumblings of the school first began. Named after renowned Kentucky entrepreneur Carroll Martin Bill Gatton, the school first opened its doors in 2007 to a select group of 126 public high school students. Aside from meeting stringent admission criteria, today's Gatton Academy students embody a love and talent for science and math. Students here also share a common hunger for college-level academics, and that is exactly what they get at the Gatton Academy. Students emerge in academics as they live and study in a residence hall built especially for them on Western Kentucky University's campus. Most classes are college level and are taken on the WKU campus alongside college undergrads. At the Gatton Academy, students break the traditional high school mold, trading locker-filled hallways and 8 a.m. bells for access to college-level innovative technology and the study of DNA and alternative fuels. Students work regularly with their instructors on scientific research projects and also take advantage of the school's study abroad programs. This past winter, several students had the opportunity to study in Western Europe and Costa Rica. Students at the Gatton Academy graduate with more than just a high school diploma, as many students are well on their way to obtaining a college and postgraduate degrees by the time they graduate high school. The Gatton Academy is one of 16 residential public high schools in the nation specializing in science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM subjects. In a world of increased global competitiveness, enhanced STEM education is critical if we want to maintain one of the world's most technologically advanced nations. I applaud the faculty and staff at both the Gatton Academy and WKU for fully recognizing this and making a commitment to the education of the Commonwealth's best and brightest students. Specifically, I would like to recognize the Gatton Academy's Executive Director and Visionary for the Academy, Dr. Julia Roberts, and Director Dr. Tim Gott, and congratulate them on this recognition, which is a testament to their years of hard work. I would also like to congratulate and thank Dr. Gary Ransdell, the President of Western Kentucky University, for making WKU's partnership with the Gatton Academy possible. Again, I offer my congratulations to the entire Gatton Academy community on this outstanding accomplishment. I look forward to following the future success of the Gatton Academy and its students. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Langevin. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud today to participate in the Foster Youth Shadow Day program in honor of National Foster Youth Month. Many of my colleagues today have been paired with a foster youth to give them a first-hand glimpse of life in and around the Capitol. It's our goal to encourage them to nurture their innate talents, develop their leadership qualities, and even explore potential careers here in Washington. I'd like to thank all of the co-chairs of the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth, of which I'm a proud member, for planning this important event today. I'm also pleased to be paired with Dee St. Frank, a young woman who shows us all what determination and perseverance truly look like. Coming from a family that took in foster children, one of my priorities in Congress has been to ensure that this population has every opportunity to access and achieve success. Drawing on her personal experiences and leadership abilities, Dee has emerged as a strong advocate on this issue, and I've had the privilege of working with Dee on issues affecting youth in the foster care system, and I have deep respect for her commitment, courage, and her capabilities. Among her many accomplishments, she's demonstrated tremendous passion and skill through her role as board co-chair of the Voice and as Rhode Island's delegate to the New England Youth Coalition. She's attained an associate's degree in business management from Johnson & Wales University and works for the Rhode Island Foster Parents Association. Now, Dee came under the care of the Department of Children, Youth and Families at the age of 7 years old. She lived in group homes and with foster families, and unfortunately at some point along the way became herself a victim of identity theft. Now, this issue of identity theft had come to my attention a few years ago, and Dee's personal story, as well as the stories of numerous other foster youth brave enough to step forward, was crucial in passing legislation to deal with this problem. I'm pleased to report that last year, President Obama signed into law the Child and Family Services Improvement and Innovation Act, which contained a provision I authored to address identity theft in the foster care system. The measure requires states to provide foster youth ages 16 and older with a free copy of any consumer credit report pertaining to them while under state care, and to fix any problems if they are found, so that when the child leaves state care, they do so with their identity and their credit intact. While this law certainly would have helped would have protected Dee and others like her, she's nevertheless persevered and has done remarkable work with her peers in Rhode Island. Moving forward, Congress needs to do its part to further support Dee's efforts to level the playing field for foster youth. I'm proud to support bipartisan legislation being introduced by caucus members today to remove obstacles to ensuring that foster youth get the education that they deserve. We can all take simple steps to help them to apply for state benefits and financial aid they need when they age out of the system, and I've introduced legislation for that very purpose. Now at the age of 22, I'm pleased to report that Dee is attending Rhode Island College, my alma mater, to pursue a bachelor's degree in social work. I'm also proud that Dee is working to give something back to her community and wants to focus her academic career in the area for which she is uniquely qualified. She's a role model for her daughter and for all of us here today. And perhaps, Mr. Speaker, one day she'll be down speaking on the House floor herself in the not-too-distant future. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time and thank everyone for their support of Foster Awareness Month. Thank you very much, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of myself, Representatives Bob Goodlatte and Robert Hurt, I am deeply saddened to report the passing of a former member of this body. On May 23, 2012, former 9th District United States Congressman William Wampler passed away at his home in Bristol, Virginia. A man of principle, integrity, and courage, our nation has truly lost a great man. Born in Pennington Gap and raised in Bristol, Bill attended the Bristol Public Schools. The son of a hardware store businessman and a school teacher, Bill was a budding leader even in his youth. He was voted class president each of his 4 years at Virginia High School. At the height of World War II, in May of 1943, Bill, just 17 years old, enlisted in the United States Navy. For the next 27 months, Bill served as a seaman until the end of the war. Upon returning to Southwest Virginia, Bill resumed his studies, pursuing his undergraduate degree from Virginia Polytechnic Institute in 1948, and then his law degree from the University of Virginia. A Republican by birth, Bill joined the party his family supported because of its opposition to slavery. His first foray into politics came in 1948 while working as the Republican Assistant Campaign Manager for the 9th District congressional elections. Shortly thereafter, in 1953, at the ripe old age of 26, Bill was elected to the 83rd Congress. For the next 2 years, Bill had the